And thank you very much. Here we are again. We're back to our Portugal Railway Summit 2021. I would like to thank you again for our gold sponsors that they are Thales, Portugal, um, Siemens, Portugal, CP, Portuguese Railways, Metro do Porto, Incomef, and also the Competence Center of Rail for our engineering university. So thank you all to this new panel. It will proceeding with the European investment plans, and our moderator, it will be Mr. Gorm Freeman Lund, sorry for my spelling, President of the European Rail Infrastructure Manager. So thank you very much, Mr. Gorm. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Paolo. Dear ladies and gentlemen, presados, senores and madames, it is a great pleasure for me to moderate this panel on European investment plans. The topic could not have been chosen better by the conference organizer, Paulo Duarte of the Portuguese Railway Cluster Platform Association and Francisco Cardoso dos Reis of the Portuguese Infrastructure Manager IP. Times are challenging and investments have become increasingly rare. However, let's also be positive. The political climate for rail investments in rail infrastructure as a key actor for decarbonizing the wider EU economy has never been better. I am in a lucky position that the Norwegian government has launched a vast investment program into ERTMS and electrification. Therefore, it is even more interesting to learn about investment activities in other countries, such as France, the UK, Sweden, and Spain. Just for the housekeeping, we have foreseen questions at the end of all presentations during the discussion panel. And I would now like to invite the first speaker, Alain Quinet, Executive Director General Strategy and Corporate Affairs of Sncf Resort and co-chair of the EU Platform of Rail Infrastructure Managers, PRIME. He will present the challenges and principles of the French Rail Infrastructure Investment Plan and provide some international market analysis. Alain, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Gorm. Thank you very much for your introduction. And I must say that I'm very honored to be part of this summit. Of course, because of the long-term commitment of Portugal to the construction of European railways, and also because the European Commission has recently released a very important white paper and a communication on smart and sustainable mobility. And of course, I should encourage everybody to read carefully this paper, which sets really a new framework for our investment planning and activities. I don't know, Paolo, if you can share my slides with the audience. I can't see them on my screen. But
okay, you can proceed.
Okay, excellent. So what I can just say is that, first of all, when you read that the white paper released by European Commissions, we face very challenging targets because the objective is really to massively increase the traffic by rail. And when you look, for example, at two quantitative targets by mid-century, the ambition is to double traffic on high-speed lines in Europe. And when you look at freight, the ambition is to triple the traffic on freight. So that's very challenging and very ambitious targets. And I would say it's good to have ambitious targets in present circumstances. It gives us a lot of optimism and challenges to deal with. So if I just focus on the French network, I would basically say that we face, in fact, three main challenges. As you may know, when you look at the French network today, it's a big network, an extensive network. And really the challenge is not necessarily to expand massively this network, but to develop mass transit and railway traffic within urban areas. That's the first challenge. The second challenge is that we have an aging infrastructures. I think older than most of our European partners. When you look at track, for example, it's 30 years old on average. And of course, we have a massive challenge of maintenance and renewal of the existing network. And then we already have a mature high-speed network. So I'm not sure we can domestically contribute massively to the European ambition to double the traffic, but at least we can contribute to the development of long distance and international traffic on high-speed lines and also on freight. And I'd like to come back rapidly on each of these three challenges. So
sorry, Alan, we are at your first slide, that it is the one with the infrastructure, cost, services, and data. Please let me know when you want me to proceed with the slides presentation, okay?
Okay, unfortunately, I can't see the slide on my screen. So what I just want to do now is give a few figures about our investments. So when you look at renewal investments, we spend 2.8 billion euros per year. That's mainly for the main network. When you look at regional lines, we spend something like 1.2 billion euros. And when we look at development of new projects, it's something like 1 billion euro per year. So basically, on a whole, we spend something like 5 billion euros per year. So just if I go to the next slide on the challenge of investing in renewal, what you can see now is that we have massively underinvested in the renewal of our network over the last decades, all over the 80s, all over the 90s, and up to mid-20. And as the slide may show, we now have a rebound of our renewal investment over the last 5-6 years, and that's really our main priority for the coming years. It takes time, it's boring, it's costly, but it's absolutely necessary if we want to have to deliver a good quality of services to renew the existing network. When you look at the next slide, you can see that now, if you benchmark the maintenance expenditures of Sncf Réseau compared to other European partners, when we can see that we have increased our investment, but it's still a little below what is spent on the Swiss network, on the Dutch network, on the German network, and so on. So we basically are doing a good job, but it's really, I would say, the minimum, as we should say, as regard the renewal investment. And we know that we will have to invest for a long number of years before stopping the aging of our network and before obtaining a real renewal of our network. That's basically the basic work, I would say. And on top of that, there are room for developments. And I'd like to stress 3 areas of priorities as regards development. The first area of priority concerned Paris and the Paris region. If you look at the next slide, Paolo, which gives you an idea of the Paris area. I'm not going to comment into detail the map, but what I can say is that by the end of this decade, we will have completed our ambition on the mass transit line within and around Paris. We will have these big area lines which go through Paris. We will have a circle of tram trains around Paris, and we will have the new metro tram going through all the suburbs around Paris, which is called Grand Paris Express. And by the mid of the decade, it will be very easy by train, by metro, by tram train, to travel within Paris or around Paris. And that's a massive change and a massive improvement in a region which accounts for 30% of our GDP and of the population. What then, next slide, we are trying to do now is to try to replicate this model of RER, of massive transit lines, for other major cities of France. And so our ambition is really to develop new mass transit lines around Bordeaux, around Lyon, around Rennes, around in the east of France as well, around Aix-Marseille. So really the ambition is to try to replicate what has proven to be very effective in terms of congestion, in terms of environment, to replicate it in other areas. And it doesn't imply massive investment. It implied adaptation of the existing networks. That's why we believe that we can go forward with it. And then maybe the last areas of progress, of developments, concern the international traffic, both freight and high-speed lines. Just a small word on freight. I know that France is not the best country as regards freight traffic. The modal share is lower than in other neighboring countries, and we know that we face a lot of complaints from our neighboring colleagues. Anyway, we are working hard to come back on the freight major links, and you have in the next slide an example of all the works which are done on the Atlantic to foster the Atlantic links from Paris to Spain and then Portugal. So I'm not going to comment into detail of the works, but you can know that it's a lot of small works all across these Atlantic links. And then comes the next slide, the interesting issue, which is how we could contribute to this massive projected increase of high-speed traffic across Europe. You know that in France we have a tradition of high-speed lines, and we have a very nice high-speed network, like in Spain. And of course, there is not that much room for maneuver to increase the traffic on the domestic French line, which has already congested. But there are a lot of possibilities to develop international traffics based on our domestic lines. And I should already share with you a figure, which is of course a pre-COVID figure, which is that when you look at the traffic on our existing high-speed network, already 1/4 of this traffic is part of an international journey. So we already have a network which is largely interconnected with the rest of Europe, and which is already part of an international traffic. Then we know that based on these already nice results, there are some room for improvements. And when you look at the next slide, which proposes a map of France with its neighboring countries, you can see that when you look at the area of relevance of high-speed trains, which is up to 4 hours travel, 4 hours journey, you can see that potentially there are a lot of possibilities to develop the high-speed traffic. You can see based on the colors of the map that the opportunities, at least in the short term, are more in the eastern and northern part of Europe rather than on the south. And it mainly reflects the level of interconnection today. But then when you look at the next slide, you can see that it's easy to draw a map where the French network is fully interconnected with the high-speed lines in the UK, in the northern countries of Europe, with Germany, with Italy, and with Spain. And if we want to go into more details, in the next slide, I think we really need to distinguish between two different markets. Of course, we have the Northern Europe market, where you already have a very well interconnected high-speed line network. We can really talk about an international network of high-speed lines, which service a large and mature market. And once again, the figures are very impressive pre-COVID, because, for example, between Paris and London, it was 11 million of passengers in 2019. When you look at the southern part of France and the interconnections with Italy, Spain, Portugal, and so on, of course, the technical interconnections are not as dense as in the north. But what is interesting to see is that thanks to the opening up of competitions in all these countries, we can see a lot of opportunities emerging, and with newcomers testing the market and looking at business model where they can provide both international and domestic services. And we believe that there are in the coming years a lot of opportunities to develop high-speed traffic in the southern part of France and Europe. Of course, what needs to be done if we want to foster all these opportunities of development of high-speed traffic? In the next slide, I just want to insist that, of course, there are some important technical issues, and the European agency is dealing with this issue. In Prime, the Prime platform, we are important contributors to this technical convergence, which means interoperability and technical interoperability, process interoperability. And of course, part of the answer is in the hands of the railway undertakings, because of course we know that the competitiveness of rail compared to air is based, of course, on the ability of the infrastructure, but also on the frequency of the services offered by railway undertaking. So we can contribute, of course, but it's also a commercial issue in the end of railway undertakings. Then maybe just to conclude, Paolo, because I don't want to be too long, I'd like just to come back to this sustainability issue, which is the basis of the white paper of the European Commission. I think that if we want to foster the development of our activities and of the railway, there are really two different issues. There is first of all, the climate change issue. And we know that if we want to increase the modal share of our railways in the mobility patterns, of course, we have to do our homework with the quality of service, with time gains provided by high-speed lines, but of course, we need also a level playing field. So I think carbon pricing at the European level is a very important input, and I hope that the reform of the ETS, the European Trading Scheme, will provide new opportunities to foster this level playing field. And the second issue is more local issue. We know that if we want to develop railways, we have to be very careful as infrastructure manager to minimize our environmental footprint, which means minimize noise, minimize the impact of works, preserving biodiversity, manage the vegetation. So we know that today our European citizens are very sensitive to these local environmental issues, and we need to be very careful about local environmental issues as well as the global climate challenge. So Paulo, that's it. Thank you very much for your help as regards the slide, and I'll give you back the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we will proceed.
Yes, thank you very much. I would now like to invite the second speaker, Robert Ampoma, the Chief Technical Officer of Network Rail, to represent the company's operating model and the UK long-term strategy and research and development investments. So Robert, please proceed.
Thank you, Gorm. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Robert, don't forget, if you have a presentation, to put it and do it to the share,
Okay.
please.
Let me just
Thank you.
put it on. Can you see my slide okay?
Not yet.
Not yet.
It's
Let me just see.
give it some time. No.
No. Still nothing.
Just a moment, please.
Should be there. All right, let me try. See why it's not coming up.
Robert, I think you're already okay.
Is it come through? Oh, hang on, let me just see. It seems like it's paused. Okay, can you see now?
Yes.
Yes, you can proceed. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you, Paulo. Right. Okay, so where am I? Yes, so firstly, I'll try my best Portuguese. Bom dia and bonjour to everyone, my esteemed railway colleagues. My presentation today is going to just talk about the Network Rail operating model, some of our current portfolio, and our planning framework over the next. We kind of do it over a 5-year control period. Our forward investments, very specifically on R&D, but also the broader sector in terms of our rail technical strategy, and a bit of information about where our technical strategy is focused. So like many parts of our European railway, Britain's railway has also been affected significantly by the pandemic, and we have some immediate challenges to recover back to the levels that we achieved pre-pandemic, where we'd previously achieved record passenger numbers, and we're looking forward to growth over the next 10 to 20 year period. And unfortunately, that's obviously challenged us financially and in terms of funding for the future railway. But I think it's safe to say that the focus within the industry and certainly from government is, the pandemic is hopefully a small blip that we'll recover from. But there are more global issues like climate change, which will challenge us even greater. So from an operating model point of view, we have over the last year have changed the way we operate with devolution of decision making to 5 parts of our network, which we call 5 regions. So the 5 regions are Scotland, Wales and Western England, Eastern England, Northwest and Central England, and Southern England. And the idea of this is to change the way we operate so that we're closer to delivering for our passengers and from our freight customers, to enable us them to engage easier with us, rather than a big corporate function, and be more dependable, take a lead role in the UK rail industry as well. Technology development and deployment is one of our key aims and focuses to deliver a more efficient railway. We operate via a 5-year operating cycle, of which we're about halfway through now, through our current 5-year cycle, which is funded by the UK government via grant, determined by a high-level output specification, which the Department of Transport issued to Network Rail. And from the current control period, we've been given a grant of 53 billion pounds, about 60 billion euros, invested into the railway for maintenance, renewals, and also enhancements. I will add that in addition, you probably know of the high-speed network, which is being constructed currently. So it's at early stages, starting from London, between London and Birmingham, in the center of England, and there is an aim to connect the northern powerhouse of UK railway to the middle and sort of southern parts of London, southern parts of England in London. So our railway is quite regionalised in the way we operate, and it tends to be regionalised for north, east, west, and London areas. And our ambition is to try and improve transport connectivity, including train to tram and also other modes of transport, to have a whole transport system rather than a sort of disconnected transport system. The challenges of pandemic unfortunately also threaten our current and future investment in the railway, and it's one of the areas we're focusing on, is trying to bring passengers back safely. So as part of our strategy, we have a 30-year long-term strategy developed to contribute to national and regional economic growth. There's also improvements in relating to social well-being, and the need to understand what the likely changes in demand due to environmental impacts, as well as passenger needs and service options for freight users. So freight is an opportunity that we recognise has got great growth potential compared to the passenger, which is more of a gradual growth because it's already in some places at capacity. So a lot of our focus is on developing and improving freight paths in order to achieve that electrification and providing different modes of transportation for freight vehicles to operate around our network. So our strategic plans involve working with the regions, the train operating companies, freight companies, transport bodies, and advising and presenting to funders to help them understand the complexities and make informed investment decisions. A key part of this socio-economic drive and environmental drive is to improve, is delivered through our rail technical strategy, which I will talk about shortly. The main deliverables of the rail technical strategy related to data-driven. So we're really focusing on data and improve our data to help our decision making. European Trail Control Systems, ETCS, deployment of that is a huge driver for us, both in terms of cost as well as efficiency and improving our capacity issue. Obviously, the UK government has a net carbon zero target for 2050, of which rail is a huge part of that drive, with it being only about 2% of our carbon emissions in the UK. The drive is to push that down even further and make rail the sort of the transport mode of choice. Okay, from our R&D perspective, as I mentioned, a lot of focus on R&D within Network Rail's portfolio. We have set up an R&D team to focus on delivering outputs with an investment of £245 million from the government, and also third-party funding contributions of around £112 million. And the aim of this really is to try and de-risk technologies to exploit new ideas, products and services to benefit passengers and freight users. One of the most pressing outcomes from the portfolio is to plug the gap with asset sustainability in future control periods. So looking at the next control period in about 2.5 years' time, the drive is to try and scale up our renewals and maintenance required to support safe and reliable train services. And R&D portfolio is a key part of that. And there's a variety of things that we're focusing on in terms of robotics, autonomy, so trying to have autonomous vehicles, autonomous methods of repairing the infrastructure and replacing it as well, energy, and also using 3D modeling as part of a digital railway. Slide's a little bit fuzzy, but yeah, focus on technology introduction is one of the key things. So one of our challenges has always been developing technology at pace, but in order to do that, we need to make sure that the outputs are something that are plugged into our delivery plans. So we've formed a very good partnership with a number of our universities, which is growing at the moment. We have 8 of our top universities focused on as part of the UK Rail Research and Innovation Network. And that involves the likes of Southampton, Birmingham, Sheffield, Huddersfield, and a few others. And they're helping us deliver our R&D portfolio over the next 5 years, and looking to extend that for future years as well. The universities are all part of a key partnership with the rail supply industry. So it's not just about developing the technical capability, but it's also looking at the skills profile of our network to deliver establish ourselves as a world leading centre of excellence. And with the universities partnerships we have, we deliver a lot of those initiatives within the UK, but also across Europe and across the world. Our R&D strategy also involves delivering and deploying innovation at pace through agile and innovative procurement. So we've done a number of design contests, some hackathons, and to deliver procurable outputs. And then just to finish off, so I mentioned about rail technical strategy. Our strategic vision has been published since October last year. And one of the key things is focusing on innovation and technology, and it's about a role being played using improved technology to target some 4 key outputs about meeting our customer and our customer needs, attracting talent, investment, deliver out benefits for the wider community, and contribute to a better environment. So that involves us focusing on low emissions, easy to use, so about connectivity, optimizing our train operations, being reliable and easy to maintain, so that we've given the paths and therefore the capacity that we need, and then being data driven. So these are all key parts of our rail technical strategy, which has been developed across UK rail industry. And it's going to form a key part of our submission for the next five years control period, which is due later on this year, and then will involve delivery of these functional priorities. Okay. Thank you very much for listening. And over back to you, Gorm. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we will now move on to the third speaker, which is Anna Bildt Persson, Chief Strategist and Deputy Executive Director of Trafikverket. He presents Sweden's long-term direction.
Sorry to interrupt, Robert. In order to share a screen, I need you to come out of your sharing screen, please. Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Gorm.
That's okay, Paolo. And if I understood rightly, Paolo, you will take the presentation for Anna? Yes. And here you are. Excellent.
Thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me to this Railway Summit and to this panel on European investment plans today. I'm going to present some of what is in focus right now in Sweden. Firstly, we have a pre-planning upfront the next national transport plan, and the pre-planning sets the direction and focus of the next national transport plan in what we call a direction plan. And I will also present railway investments in the running national transport plan. Maybe if you can choose the full screen mode. If you can choose the full screen mode, and then the next slide, we have a very short presentation of the Swedish Transport Administration, Trafikverket. On the next slide, slide number 3. The Swedish Transport Administration is a multimodal administration, meaning that we are responsible for the long-term planning of the transport system for roads and railways, but also shipping and aviation. We are also an infrastructure manager for rails and roads, so we are responsible for the construction, operation, maintenance of state road network and the national rail network. And we also procure national public service obligations for all transport modes. And on the next slide, we have some short figures of Trafikverket. We have a business volume of about 6.3 billion euros for 2019. We are about 9,000 employees in the administration, and you can see the extent of the state road network and the national railway network. And we also have some ferries and ferry berth to take care of. To introduce the direction plan, I would like to start with a slide showing the planning process, or the financial planning process. It takes its direction in our transport policy goals on accessibility, environment, and safety. And this process starts with the direction plan, or the pre-planning. It sets focus and direction for our next long-term planning. We delivered the direction plan late autumn, and now we await the next infrastructure bill from the government. We hope and we think that this will arrive during this spring. And the bill, of course, sets the political direction as well as the financial framework for our next national transport plan. How much Sweden will spend on maintenance and investments in the railway network, the road network, fairways, subsidies for sustainable cities, etc. And after the bill, the government will give Trafikverket a mission or task to present a new national transport plan. Usually it's for 12 years, starting by 2022. And Trafikverket then implements national transport plan through an implementation plan that covers 6 years and short-term planning, of course. And I would like to add that in every step of the process, there are a great number of stakeholders consulted. So we have a close cooperation with regions and municipalities, but also with business and industry. And on the next slide, I have set some starting points for the new direction plan. We review it usually every 4 years, and it forms the basis for the infrastructure bill and the next transport plan. We have this time been asked to investigate 2 alternative periods, one for 12 years from 2022 to 2033, and one for 16 years. So running up till 2037. We have a financial framework for the direction plan that amounts to 62 billion years for 12 years. And we were also asked to identify and describe a framework that is minus 20% of that and plus 20% of that. And this time we have a quite broad perspective. The climate goal, of course, is central. In Sweden, the climate goal for 2030 is a 70% reduction of greenhouse gases, and that counts for inland transports. And we have a climate goal for 2050 that is to have a climate neutral transport system. But we have also been asked this time to make an analysis of policy instruments to reach the climate goal in a sustainable and cost-effective way. So it's not only about infrastructure, it's also about policy instruments this time. And of course, in addition to the climate goal, we focus on robustness and reliability, accessibility for the whole country, the whole of Sweden, competitiveness for business and industry, safety and security, very important and quite new aspects, at least security, of course, and of course digitization and rapid technological change. And on the next slide, I have sort of tried to summarize the main messages and the conclusions. We have, of course, we see, of course, growth in traffic and transport. We have a prognosis year of 2040. So until then, we see a rapid growth in transport or traffic for both, for all modes, both railways and roads and aviation, maritime. But we also know that the growth of population and the growing economy are the strongest drivers for this traffic or the transport demand. I mentioned that we were asked to do an analysis of how to reach the climate goals, and we see that these can be reached through extensive electrification, increased use of biofuels, and increased fuel prices too. And we also see a growing need for maintenance concerning both railways and road infrastructure. Taking care of the existing infrastructure is the most effective and efficient action we can take. But since we have a financial framework, we also see that this makes, to take a larger share of the budget to maintenance, makes priority settings very tough. And for the first time, we have also identified skill supply in the long term to be a very important challenge for the railway sector and for the infrastructure sector as a whole. And on the next slide, we see the ongoing national plan, the one from 2018 to 2029. And we have a total budget for maintenance, 12 billion euros for this 12-year period for railways. For maintenance of the state road network, 16 billion euros. For development or investments, we have a budget for 33 billion euros. And also we have additional financing through, for example, congestion taxes and track access charges of about 9 billion euros. Despite increased funding, we know that the needs are very large, both of investments and of maintenance of both the railway and the road network. And to summarize, on the last slide, I have put together some of the large-scale investments in the railway in the railway network in Sweden. So these are the investments of the current or ongoing national transport plan. Some examples, and you saw the budget, the total budget of investments in the last slide, and about 77% of the large-scale investments are in the railway network. And for example, ERTMS is a very big large-scale investment project. Investments in digital capacity program. We have investments in the north of Sweden and in the west of Sweden. And we also have 3 projects that start the new high-speed rail network in Sweden. The high-speed rail network is planned to bring the south and the west of Sweden closer to the Stockholm region. We have the East Link project, we have the Gothenburg-Borås project, and Hässleholm-Lund project. So that's the first start of the high-speed rail network. And also with the National Transport Plan, we have a focus on freight. We have a special trade and market funding in the plan, where we have a possibility to prioritize together with business and industry, with a funding of about 118 million euros for trimming measures in the network. We have had increased funding for railway network maintenance in the national plan. We have a focus on investments in hubs and terminals and maritime fairways to connect different modes to each other. And we also have a collaboration with the industry and business. We have created a National Freight Transport Council and a National Freight Transport Strategy. So this is a summary, and I think on the last slide you also can find the link to a summary in English of our new direction plan. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anna. I will now invite the fourth speaker, Alvaro Mascaraque Silero, Subdirector International Coordination and Affairs of ADIF, to present the main facts and figures about Spain, the Spanish strategy of mobility in 2030 and its strategic lines. So please, Alvaro.
Good afternoon, thank you for the introduction. I don't see if you can see the presentation now. Yeah, okay.
Yes, it's okay. Yeah. You can proceed.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you, Gon, for the introduction, and thank you very much to the organization of Plataforma Ferroviaria Portuguesa for giving me the opportunity of outlining a DIF investment plan. Before going into the details of the plan, I would like to start with the current state of play in Spain and with an overview of the high-level strategic guidelines of the Spanish Ministry of Transport and, of course, of ADIF for this decade. ADIF, as all of you know, owns and manages a complex network of more than 15,000 kilometers, which includes 3 different track gauges. A metric gauge in the north of the country, Iberian gauge, which is wider for the conventional lines, and a standard gauge, or what we call international gauge, for the high-speed lines, as you can see in the map in the slide. We're also responsible for 1,600 stations and 29 service facilities. After decades of lack of investments over the past 25 years, railways, especially high speed, have been a national priority in this country. We have invested a lot, over 55 billion, to build more than 3,500 kilometers of high speed line. I think the whole country is proud of what the administration and the industry have accomplished, but now it's time for us as infrastructure manager to make the most of it and keep working. In Spain, freight transport was liberalized in 2007, and today 20 railway undertakings have license to operate in our network in open access conditions. And one of our current key projects is the liberalization of the passenger services. It was a long and complicated process, especially in the middle of the COVID crisis, but from our point of view, it was still a success. Last May, ADIF signed framework agreements with 3 companies, which now have the capacity reserved for the coming 10 years in the main high-speed lines. In fact, Riosfera, which is a Sncf subsidiary, will start operating next May. And ILSA, which is a joint venture between Trenitalia, the Italian incumbent, and Air Nostrum, a Spanish airline company, will begin operating next year. And I think that, well, that's great news, because the entry of new operators with a consequent increase in traffic will contribute to improving the economic sustainability of the company. Over the next years, and Alain talked a little bit about this too, and in order to make rail the backbone of the European mobility, the European funds are going to play a key role. We have been working in close cooperation with the Spanish Ministry of Transport on projects that can be included in the Recovery and Resilience Funds. And of course, there is a strong need for an ambitious new Connecting Europe facility, or CEF2, that will enable all European network to adapt to the requirements of the future, and saying digitalization or multimodal interfaces. The transport sector must undergo a great transformation in order to respond to the current challenges, such as technological evolution, the fight against the climate change, or the concentration of the population in large urban areas. In this context, the Spanish Ministry of Transport is promoting a new mobility strategy, and is drafting a new sustainable mobility law. It is a process that aims to keep all the stakeholders involved, especially business organizations, experts, and universities, and of course, as well as citizens. This new strategy should be the guide for the actions to be promoted in the country in the next decade. It is based on 3 key concepts: safety and security, sustainability and connectivity. And you can see in the slide that it is developed along 9 priority axes. Given the numerous items that are included in the strategy, the ministry wants to focus especially on new investment policies, optimizing resources to achieve the greatest social benefit. In the case of rail or regarding rail, it is necessary to place rail transport, both for passengers and freight, as the backbone of the national transport policies. And in line with the mobility strategy promoted by the ministry, in ADIF, we continue working on the implementation of the strategic plan 2030. You can see in the slide that we have identified 10 challenges really important for the next decade for the company: liberalization, economic sustainability, digitalization, or, for example, general replacement, which is a critical issue in ADIF, as Antonio Laranjo said that it was in Infraestructuras de Portugal too. All these are some of them. And we have recently added a new one, as the challenge of facing new scenarios of pandemic or emergencies, for example, those related to climate change. ADIF workers, and we are around 12,000, as ADIF main drive force, will raise 4 strategic pillars: safety, service, sustainability, and performance orientation. And we will do it using 3 transformation levers that are communication, innovation, and digital transformation. In the coming years, the plan actions aim at improving the efficiency and reliability of the 16 network, promoting intermodality, and of course advancing the creation of the single European railway arena that will increase the territorial cohesion inside the country and inside Europe. And now let's start with the main chapters of our investment plan. In the area of high performance infrastructure, Spain will focus on finalizing those that are currently under development, with the aim of completing end-to-end itineraries. For example, finalizing the connection to the northeast, an area that was traditionally poorly connected to the rest of the country. This strategy leads us also to work in the southeast line, where we commissioned yesterday 52 new kilometers between Monforte del Cid and Beniel, near Murcia. And another works plan are the west line to Extremadura and Portugal, the north line from Burgos to the Basque Country, and of course the full connection or the full connectivity between the north and south part of the high-speed network in Madrid. Regarding the 16 network, what we call the conventional network, we are going to focus on its modernization in order to guarantee the interregional connection and mobility for freight and passengers. In addition, works will be carried out on the commuter network, what we call in Spanish cercanías, which are fundamental services to guarantee the sustainable urban mobility. And concerning freight transport, we will reinforce basic nodal elements of the network, such as logistic facilities or the access to the ports. Of course, there will be also investments that will ensure our connection to Europe through the Mediterranean and Atlantic corridors. Being here with you almost in Lisbon, I would like to highlight the investment plan for the Atlantic corridor that we share with Portugal and France. The main aim is to increase the capacity of the corridor, working on electrification, increasing the length of the train, the charging load of viaducts, and enhancing the gauge of the tunnels and platforms where necessary. This slide shows the map of services that link Spain and Portugal, mainly in freight traffic. although they are not as many as we would like, we think there is a clear growing trend. And our goal, and I'm sure is also the goal of Infraestructuras de Portugal, as Antonio Laranjo stated in the first panel, is to make our best to increase the current traffic with Portugal in the main cross-border lines in Valencia, in Vilar Formoso, and in Elvas. Now, as I mentioned in the introduction, our operation, ADIF operation, is highly influenced by the fact that we have 3 different gauges in the network. We have 3 technical solutions currently available in order to overcome this issue. The first one will be the migration from the Iberian to the standard gauge. Over the last years, we, and in some cases also Infraestructuras de Portugal at the other side of the border, have been using sleepers that allow us to change the track gauge in short time without replacing the sleepers. The second solution is the gauge change facilities that allow passenger trains to change the gauge without stopping. This can be done at a speed of 10 or 30 kilometers per hour and gives a lot of connectivity and flexibility to the services running in our network. And the next solution will be the 3-rail track, or as we call it in Spain, the mixed gauge track. This is a track with 3 rails on it, and this can be used by trains with you have a photograph in the presentation that can be used by trains with Iberian of a standard gauge. This technical development comes with a wide array of link solutions like special switches and crossings and new maintenance procedures. We are about to start a project to establish a global operating strategy for the entire network, considering the different gauges and aiming to define the technical criteria for the construction of new lines and the renewal of the existing network. In my last slide, let me finish with the last technical solution to enhance international freight transport from the Iberian Peninsula to the continent. Our National Safety Agency certified the variable gauge axle that is able to change the gauge of the freight wagon without stopping, in a similar way that we are doing now with the passenger train. The authorization issued by the NSA allows container wagons and car transponders fit with the system to run commercial services, improve journey times when crossing borders. What we expect is that this development will facilitate cross-border traffic between Portugal, Spain, and France, that will increase rail modal share, and that will contribute to the European Green Deal objective. That is all from my side. Thank you very much for your time. The floor is yours, Gon, and I'm happy to join the discussion now.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask Paulo, how much time do we have for questions, since we are a little bit lagging on time? Totally.
In fact, we have pretty much 20 minutes, so we are pretty good. No problem. We don't have any other guest coming later, so it will be lunchtime. So we are fine. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Now we've had quite a number of very interesting presentations. I would like very much that if anyone has any questions, please raise your hand or make a written comment, and we will try and catch that up. So are there any questions to any of the speakers?
Yeah, you can lead. I think at this moment, you can lead the questions, Mr. Gorn.
Yeah, okay. I will start with some questions that I have. And if I start with a question to Alain, is the objective of doubling high-speed rail traffic realistic?
Nice question. Of course, it's challenging. It's challenging. I think it's good to have quantitative targets. What I'll try to explain in my presentation, but I can come back to this point maybe now again. Of course, the maturity of high-speed markets is different across countries. So you don't have the same level of development of opportunities coming from a mature market or market where you have still some new lines to be built. But I think what is really important to understand is there are some elements which are in the hands of IAMs, and I'm thinking mostly about interoperability. Of course, you are well aware of this issue, Gorman. We are working together on this issue at the European level, but we know that a lot to be done in terms of interoperability. And there are also a lot to be done on increasing the capacity on existing lines. Just to give you an example, we are building ERTMS level 2 on the oldest high-speed lines between Paris and Lyon, which is well known. Up to now, we are able to deliver 13 train paths per hour. With ERTMS level 2 retrofitted on this line, we will go to 17 train paths per hour, which is basically an increase by 20-25%. So that's really massive. So increase the capacity. It's not only building new lines, it's also increasing the capacity on existing lines. And of course, the last point I'd just like to mention is we could see in the coming years some changes in travel patterns. Maybe tourism will be more focused on European areas where, rather than going far away from Europe. Maybe there is some will from citizens to take the train instead of the plane for domestic flights. So we know that there is, of course, what we can do technically at our own level, and how the society changes the patterns of travel and tourism.
Thank you. That's a very optimistic view of the future. What I actually notice is that there are fewer and fewer people wanting to go back to working at offices 100%. But on the other hand, we see quite a number of people working from a second home or from some cabin somewhere. That's very interesting. Okay, I have a question to Alvaro. The sector has followed with great interest the role that ADIF has taken in opening up the national rail passenger market. Will this role evolve any further in the future?
Well, I think the infrastructure managers play a very important role in the liberalization process and therefore in the growing of the railway market via open access and competitive tenders. From my point of view, there are probably two main points that IAMS has to address. The first thing is make things easy for our clients. And the second is to increase capacity of the network. Make things easy for the clients means to, for example, assure that the capacity allocation process is objective or transparent or non-discriminatory. But it's also things like prepare the stations for the newcomer with vending machines, ticketing, and so we are still in the process of preparing everything. In our case, the main priority for allocation, the main priority criteria when allocating capacity was the greater use of infrastructure. And that clear rule chose the 3 road undertakings that signed the framework agreement from the 6 candidates. So the candidates which committed to use more network or who committed to use the network more intensely won the tender. And the second point was to increase the capacity of the network, and it's something that we have to still keep on doing. We were able to put in the market 60% more capacity that the incumbent was using. In our case, in the high-speed network, the bottleneck are the station, was the station and are still the station. We have declared in our last network statement the congested, the main stations, in order to allow priority measures to be applied and also to develop measures to expand the capacity. For example, our investment plan that I talked today about includes work to increase capacity in the main stations of Madrid and Barcelona. So yes, there is still work to do, and saying so, for us, the best liberalization option was the creation of 3 packages plus open access for the remaining capacity. But I think there is no one-fits-all solution. So every infra manager will have to find its way in the liberalization process.
Yeah, that's very interesting to see how that will be developing further on. Thank you very much. I have a question also to Anna. I can't see any other questions, so I'll just take my own questions. Anna, to what degree has the Swedish investment plan been inspired by the EU Green Deal and the ambition to decarbonize transport?
Of course, we have an ambitious climate goal that also is in the white paper and the mobility strategy. And the climate goal has been in focus for our national plan, but also for our new direction plan that forms the basis for the next long-term national transport plan. So this is very much in line, but also I think connectivity or connection between modes, the multimodal perspective is very important in our planning, of course, and also in line with a white paper and the mobility strategy. So maybe those 2 features are the most important. Of course, freight competitiveness of business and industry, and the connection, the international connections, the connections between different countries, and of course many of the investments in our national transport plan also have a funding from Sncf, so they are in line with the European ambitions and objectives.
Okay, thank you. I have a question also for Robert. Can you tell us more about the role of Network Rail to innovate the rail sector? You had a lot of, I believe you had 8 universities that you cooperated with, actually. Robert?
Yes, hi, Com. Yes, so we have 8 universities, and in fact, the numbers are growing with more universities getting involved in sort of away from the traditional rail innovation. So we're looking at some of the sort of the more customer innovations with other universities participating. So which is very good for the wider industry. So we're not just looking at infrastructure. We're looking at train, sort of passenger comfort, station design as well. So there's a number of areas that we're looking at. So Network Rail is essentially trying to drive and take the lead in the rail industry in the United Kingdom to drive for improvements in all aspects of railway, not just the high-speed network, but in the sort of what we call the classic railway as well, but particularly around connectivity across different parts of our network. So innovation is hugely important for us. In order to bring the capacity, we talk lots of talk about ERTMS. We've been talking about ETCS, similar sort of technology to bring in that capacity, in particularly in a lot of our congested areas around major cities, and that's where we really need to sort of relieve some of that congestion and provide capacity into those.
Will you also be looking into ticketing?
Yes, so there is quite a bit of work on the ticketing front to try and digitize the way in which we, people can move around the network. We've already got a lot of that in play, but yeah, there's still more expansion required to just make ticketing a lot easier. The COVID has presented some broader challenges for how people purchase tickets over sort of, especially commuters on a 5-day basis. And as you mentioned earlier, more and more people are looking at working at home and not maybe coming into offices as much into the sort of busy cities that we have across the UK. So we present some challenges about how we're going to, how our operators are going to charge them to something that works with their flexibility. So there's lots of discussions going around that, and it's something we do need to understand and we need to be quite agile in how we enable that, give the customer the flexibility.
I think part of the opportunity now is that the customers do not want to touch anything other than their own phone. So
absolutely, yes, yes. So that's yeah. And there's a lot of phones around. So yes, there's a lot of technology development there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cole.
Since we still have some time, I would like to move back to Anna. You mentioned carbon pricing. How is that instrumental to achieving the goal of a different modal share?
I think it depends on the kind of traffic you're looking at. When you look at high-speed lines, for example, we have been able to shift a large part of traffic from air to rail, thanks to the gains in traveling time. So time saving for high-speed line may be enough to foster a modal shift from air to rail. But then when you look at other segments of market, and especially when you think about freight, what you can see, there is no gains in time or in quality of services, which is enough to foster per se a modal shift. So you really need, if you really want to triple the traffic on freight as ambition by the European Commission, of course, you need an external push. And I think that basically the external push will come from carbon pricing, because it's the most obvious external cost, which is underpriced in the mobility patterns.
Right. May that also involve a reduction in track access charges for boosting the market?
That may be part, of course, but as you know, you have to strike a delicate balance between fostering entry of newcomers and at the same time being able to deliver the renewal investment which are needed. And just to give you an example, I already mentioned it in previous fora. When I was talking about the implementation of ERTMS level 2 between Paris and Lyon. Of course, it has been done without any French public subsidy, but thanks to the track access charges, which give a lot of rentability to these investments on congested high-speed lines. So you have to balance between the need to attract newcomers and the need to foster the rentability of your investments.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. I think I'm running out of questions.
Yes, if I'm allowed, I would like to address all the speakers, especially one question. We have been all speaking of heavy investments, infrastructure investments, but what about this means heavy railway? But what about light rail? What about mobility inside the cities? How do we interconnect these infrastructure heavy investments along with the urgent need for people day-to-day life inside the cities in a way that we can push them outside their cars, outside other travel solutions to railway? How do you see it?
Well, if I may, Gorn.
Yes, please.
In our case, when we talk about the investments in commuter lines, what we call cercanías, is that kind of mobility. Is mobility of the daily basis, and is trying to avoid people use the car. There's a number of investments that you can make to increase public transport. Of course, there is investment in infrastructure, but there is also investment in making things easier for the commuters. Is investment in being able to convert your stations in multimodal platforms, so people can leave the car or can take the bike. Or so I think we have to be able to use our commuter stations like a mobility hub inside the cities.
What do you think about Alain, Anna, and Robert? Because in terms in infrastructure, in fact, what Alvaro was mentioning, it is exactly that. If we don't think in a way that besides they have infrastructure kind of connecting A to B, if we don't build also solutions for intermobility in order to connect the light rail, the bicycles, the skates, the people, how the people move, in fact, we just do halfway, half of the solution. So in fact, we are all agreed that it needs to be done, and also together effort in order to achieve this situation. Yes. Considering mobility in all Europe, that's what we are talking about. But this is in the looking at the big picture. But the small picture, it is inside the city itself, and how people move inside the city in a way that they can place in their minds. Railway is in fact a good and a fantastic way to move around, to have mobility problems solved.
Yeah, if I may underline what Alvaro just said about collaboration and collaboration with different stakeholders, and also coordination of planning, I think is very, very important. Planning together with the municipalities and the regions that also have a mandate and is a very important, they are very important stakeholders here to get this attractive transport system that is multimodal and that works together. I think planning together and implementation together and coordination of plans is a very important area, and I think we can do much more in that aspect as well.
Good.
Paolo,
yes, Robert. Yes.
Yeah, so I think certainly for us it's similar to Anna. I think it is we are undertaking a review of connectivity of all the transport modes on behalf of the government, basically looking at opportunities for economic growth, different employment, so the way in which employment may be changing in the future. So looking at job creation, but also the social cohesion elements. So how different societies are based on particular areas and particular regions in the country. So we've already done some work on tram, train, but we're looking at the broader aspects of transport modes and connectivity. And I think that's in the cities and some of our towns, that's absolutely critical to provide an overall transport system.
Yeah, and that brings the pandemic situation problems as well, but that's another discussion. Absolutely. Definitely. Well, just one final question for Alvaro. Well, here in Iberia, Portugal and Spain, we all have this research, the importance of the gouge problem. And this is a problem that definitely needs to be discussed together, because what everybody asks, okay, what's the solution? What do you think about it? Your presentation was quite clear about it, but people keep asking in the forum. Okay, but bottom of line, how it will go? How are you going to solve the whole rolling stock problem with the new acquisitions to be made? What policies are you going to put in place? What decisions are you going to make? So can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, in fact, the last two slides of my presentation were about that. And the thing is that we are on it. We are launching a project to think about the gouge strategy from the bottom line, from the beginning. We know what is the current situation now. We know what are the possible technological solutions that we have in hand. And then that we is not a deep, that we is the sector, is the ministry, is probably also Portugal, need to think in a solution. And probably the solution is not going to be one solution for the network. So the solutions are going to be stretch by stretch, gouge by gouge, line by line. It's not going to be easy to find one solution that solves all the problems, but we have, as you say, we have to address that issue.
Definitely having a summit about it.
More than one, probably.
At least at Iberia level, we must and we will, by sure. Mr.
Yes.
Frigmund Lund, I think the stage is yours to close the event. It is
Yes.
time to lunch. I don't know, for you in Europe, it is a little bit more late.
It's
Sorry.
a little bit more late here, but anyway, thanks you, Paolo, for helping me out with the questions. I would like to seize the opportunity to thank all speakers and participants, and especially you, Paolo Duarte, of the Portuguese Railway Cluster Platform Association, and Francisco Cardoso dos Reis of the Portuguese Infrastructure Manager IP for this excellent initiative. So muito obrigado. That was right, yes, and stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.
Well, thank you for you all, the speakers on this panel. And now speaking to all the audiences in our Congress, in our summit, we just like to thank you to our gold sponsors that we need to attend very carefully to be here and to have the next year summit, Thales, the Competence Center for Rail, the Engineering University of Porto, Siemens, CP, Portuguese Railways, Metro do Porto, and Incomef. So we'll be back at 2:30 in the afternoon, Lisbon time. Thank you very much. We hope to see you in the afternoon. Thank you all for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colette.